everybody, and welcome back to Purgatory. I mean, Arcadia Season 3, where I am once again in Villager Purgatory because it never ends. It never ends. You might think that having an Excel spreadsheet where you cross things off and made sure you had all of the enchanted books would mean you wouldn't have to go back to Purgatory, but no such luck, because apparently somehow the Excel spreadsheet lied to me? I don't know, but we didn't have Aqua Affinity, and then I got us Aqua Affinity, and then we didn't have Fire Protection 4, and I got us Fire Protection 4, except Fire Protection 4 took a literal half an hour! And you might be like, Corn, what's the big deal? It was just 2 books, and I mean, sure, one of them took you half an hour, but it was just 2 books. Don't stress it. And the truth is, it's not the books I'm stressing. That's not the part that's stressing me out. It's the fact that I broke Purgatory. I wasn't supposed to be doing anything until I had all of the enchanted books, and if I missed 2 of them, that means I didn't have all of the enchanted books, and I went and I did other things, and I broke Purgatory. I am on thin ice. Very, very thin ice. And Purgatory was supposed to maybe thicken the ice a little bit. Be like, you know what? Maybe Corn doesn't screw everything up. Or at least, maybe this Corn doesn't screw everything up. Maybe this Corn should be allowed to stay. But I failed Purgatory. I failed it. So, that's not good. That's really, really not good. But we're not going to think about it, because what we're going to think about is the fact that we need to build the enchanted bookstore, because yeah, we've had a pop-up shop for a while. It was just, very Hungry Caterpillar themed, very nice, just selling efficiency, mending, unbreaking. But the people of the server, we have all of the enchanted books. We have them all now. We have them all now. We were supposed to have them all before, but we have them all now. And so you know what? There is no reason for me to put off building the shop. I should just build the shop. So you know what? Let's just jump straight into the time lapse. Bookshop is complete in that it has, a building. I actually went and did a little bit more work than in the time lapse because as you can see, there's a door now. Funny me, I forgot people would actually have to go into the shop. To actually take part in the shop, it would need an entrance, and I didn't build one, so I added that. I also added these fun heads, and if you're wondering whose heads they are, it's Floral. If I'm using heads, it's probably Floral. And so this spells out the name. It's the bookWYRM, which you can see, because it's a bookworm. The worm is in like the dragon like creature. And the fun bit of it is it's like a little bit of continuity from the pop-up shop, which was also bookworm, sort of, but bookworm as in worm, as in earthworm, as in caterpillar, as in the very hungry caterpillar, and now it's bookWYRM as in a worm themed after the very hungry caterpillar, as you can see from the color scheme. And I like to think that it's the same worm all grown up, because I did actually name the pop-up shop book's mascot worm. Her name is Winifred, so this is Winifred. She's had a bit of a glow up. You can see she went from being an earthworm to a dragon worm, which is all anyone could really hope for. And yes, okay, I should probably put this out here. I know this is not taxonomically a worm. I know. I was building a worm initially, but I realized it didn't look right unless it had wings. And it was at that point that I was just building a worm with wings, which is, I think it's called an amphitheater. I don't know how to pronounce it. But then I realized I really wanted my worm to be reading. So it needed arms. Well, technically feet. So yes, this is not a worm. This is a wyvern. Wyvern is not a good enough pun. Like, it kind of passes, but it's not good enough. Bookworm is better. So yes, I know it's not taxonomically correct. Look. This is taxonomy about dragons. If we are talking about taxonomy about dragons, you have to take it with a grain of salt because we're talking about taxonomy of dragons. So yeah, this is a worm because as I say, it's a worm. Her name, as mentioned earlier, is Winifred. She's beautiful. I once again have the angles problem of not flying, so I can't see, from all of the beautiful angles, but hey, you probably saw in the time-lapse, and most importantly, all angles are good angles because I love Winifred. Look at her. She slays. She's beautiful. She is serving, is what she's doing. The only problem, the one problem is that she doesn't have an interior, which is like the whole thing of needing a functional shop. She needs an interior so we can actually sell things. So it's about time we do the interior. Interiors with Corn. Welcome to my creative building world, where I stick all of my projects before I actually build them on the server. So you can see the dragon here, you can see the snail over here. And for today's Interiors with Corn, I'm going to talk conceptual stuff about interiors, because the last Interiors with Corn was very much hands-on, this is what I want to do, but I'm just going to talk through an interior right now. So if we go in, you'll see there isn't a lot of space, which means we're going to need to dig this down because there are 41 types of enchanting books that this shop needs to sell, and it's not going to look aesthetic if it's all just like packed in here. So we definitely need a downstairs, and the upstairs can maybe have like stuff that gets sold more often. I don't know. But that, in terms of layout and spacing, we definitely need a downstairs. And the ceiling in here is going to be pretty low. So we should not. We should be aware of that. That we can't have a lot of dangly things from the ceiling, or possibly any dangling things from the ceiling. So in terms of layout, we know we need like another floor, and we know we probably shouldn't have dangly bits from the ceiling. But now we're going to talk like what's actually in the store. So we're doing a bookshop. So that means bookshelves. And then we're also probably going to sell them in barrels because barrels are aesthetic. So that's barrels. And then one of the wood tones we already have is crimson. So looking at this, we have a very nice palette. You might be thinking, Corn, what kind of palette is that? It's only 3 wood tones. And I would say yes, because I have a personal rule I keep, which is to keep things from looking overwhelming, I take at most 3 wood tones. It's the rule of 3. 1 rule of 3. And you can see here the wood tones we selected are oak because that matches the bookcase, spruce because that matches the barrel, and then the crimson that was still in the outside. So those are our 3 wood tones, but 3 wood tones does not a palette make because if everything was these 3, it would still be not great. So we want to look for other blocks that are in this family and give vibes. And when I say give vibes, I mean I'm picturing sort of like friendly on the top floor and more dark academia on the bottom floor. And if anything is going to be dark academia, we're going to need a fireplace, which means we probably want some kind of brick. And if we're looking for a brick that has the right vibes, we're definitely looking at nether brick because nether brick is in this kind of palette. And then if we're going to build off this, we also have over here we've got this, which is also over here. And then if we're going to look at this block more, we can see we've got some blue tones in here. We've already got the red covered here, but we want the blue tones. So for that, I'm going to say that the fireplace is actually going to have a soul campfire, so that'll bring out some of the blue. I'm not going to stick it directly in front. It's not a perfect match. I kind of wish it was a little bit darker, but it is what it is. And then in terms of the spruce, we're just going to use that, like, this is a built-in wood color. This is going to be an accent wood color. Now the palette is still looking a little empty and a little bit one-tone, so I'm going to look back at the build itself and say, okay, what other blocks can we steal? Obviously, we're not going to steal any of the very vibrant ones, because that doesn't fit with Dark Academia, but we can totally steal quartz and stick quartz back in here. Maybe make some nice kind of checker pattern with it. And then I'm thinking maybe we need, like, one more neutral-ish thing. So... Oh, we're going to need a carpet. Okay. Rule of thumb, you always need a carpet. If you think you don't need a carpet, you always need a carpet. You always need a carpet. So for carpet color, if we look up carpet, the magenta is not going to go well. I know this immediately. Look at this. It's completely different. Like this, it does not go. So it's not going to be magenta. Any other color is not super going to work because we're already trying to tie it differently. So we need another kind of neutral, and it's not going to be brown because that's going to tie in with the wood tones too much. So I'm thinking we pull a light gray because a dark gray is too blue toned. It's too dark toned. It's not going to look good. So we pull a light gray rug, and that's the finished palette. And while a palette isn't an interior, it's all the building blocks of one, because we've actually made a lot of decisions. We've decided we're going to have a fireplace, which, given the size of the upstairs, has to be downstairs, because a fireplace will not look good in here. Like, this isn't a good fireplace design, but, like, even if it were, this is not the space for a fireplace. The ceiling isn't big enough, it's not going to look right. So that's definitely going to be downstairs. And then we've already made the decision, based on spacing as well, that the majority of the books are going to have to be downstairs, just because we can't fit them in here. And then we've also made a decision that we're gonna have a rug. Now, because our rug is probably going to be pretty plain, it's just light gray, that means the floor is probably going to be something more interesting than that. Because the idea is that the floor and the rug should work together. So if your floor is boring, you have an interesting rug. And if your rug is boring, you have an interesting floor. And also, you can never go wrong with a checkerboard pattern. So if we're just going to have like a gray rug, then maybe we checkerboard this and this and get an interesting floor that way. And then if we put a rug on top of it, it's a nice kind of stealing focus because it tones down the floor while toning with the rug. Also, slight tangent. I didn't pick light gray for no reason. I picked light gray because I'm petty. Very, very petty. You see, when I was building this dragon, I used a fair amount of lime wool. And so I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll invest in the economy. I need a lot of lime wool. I'll just buy lime wool. That's great. This is how economies are supposed to work. So I went to the wool shop, which is owned by Dukester, and he didn't have lime wool. And I was like, oh, silly guy, he forgot, so I messaged him. I was like, hey, Duke, I'm willing to pay for lime wool. Can I have some lime wool? And he told me that there wasn't a market for it. Okay, Duke. So I went and I killed a bunch of sheep by myself. And I got all the lime wool. And then I went back to the shop, and I noticed that not only does he not have lime wool, he doesn't have light gray wool. He doesn't. Is there not a market for that, Duke? Is there not? So you know what? You heard it here first. Every single build for the rest of the season is going to have something with light gray wool. Light gray carpet, light gray sofa, I don't know. It's gonna use light gray wool every single build of mine. Just to spite you, Duke. Because yes, there is a market for it. And even if you start selling light gray wool, I'm not gonna buy it from you. Just out of spite. Friendly spite though, so no one send hate. If anyone sends hate, please leave. Don't do that. But anyway, yes, the light gray carpet choice was not entirely just random in colors. It was also anger and rage, deep-seated resentment. That's enough of a talk through of the interior. Now it's time to actually get on the server and gather materials and build an interior. Interiors with corn. And the interior of the bookshop is complete, which means now the entire shop is complete. And also, Silver has gone and stocked it, which is very great, so all we have to do is open it. But before we actually go and open it, how about you have a nice tour, so come on in. The first floor of the bookWYRM bookshop has all of the basic books that if you just want to pop in and get one of the basic standard books that everybody uses, they're all here. We've got our mending, our unbreaking, it's all up here, all very easy access. We've also got handy dandy ATM so you can actually make purchases. And also, we're doing something new at the bookWYRM actually, because we also have an alternative method of payment, which is to say, hey, if you went adventuring and you've got a max level book of some other book and you don't need it, but you'd like to pay for a book with it, say you did a bunch of ancient cities because you're Kaimedar. Say you're Kaimedar and you did a bunch of ancient cities and you have a bunch of Swift Sneak 3 books. You are more than welcome to exchange all of those Swift Sneak 3 books for any book you want from here at a 1-to-1 ratio so long as they're max level. This only works if it's max level because all of the books we're given are max level, so otherwise it's not fair. But Swift Sneak, Soul Speed, anything like that, even if you go out in the wild and you find a mending book and what you really need is Fortune 3, feel free to exchange that. That's what the book exchange is for. Descending down into the depths of the bookWYRM, you'll find the rest of, and really the majority of the stock, all neatly organized by what enchantments you would use on probably what item. For example, we've got a weapons section over here, we've got a section that's specifically for tridents, we've got a general armor section, we've got a bow section, everything is neatly organized by what enchantment you would use on what item. And of course, we keep everything fire related right next to the fireplace. That's the shop in a nutshell, and while I would love to continue the tour and tell you exactly how many armor stands are here, hint, it's a lot. The people of the server have kind of been really wanting the bookstore to be open, so I best open it before they get a little bit too antsy, you know? I put the post out 5 seconds ago, and Kaimedar is already in there. Oh no.
Of course I am. I need book.
I'm in danger.